So we just did our very first iyarn with Neale Fong, who's just an amazing man in the community. He does work in the state, WA, federally, and also internationally in the health space. Neale, we talk about how he manages in a bit of a public profile, how he kind of manages people having a go at him, and how he can kind of stay true to what his beliefs and what he's doing and holding the course. He shared a really great quote about Theodore Roosevelt at the beginning. So tune in, listen in, and hear how he talks about his journey going through from his adolescence into being a father, and how he can be the best leader and best version he can. So Neale.
Hi Lockie, how are you?
We're here for our very first episode, number 1 of the iyarn.
I feel very honoured.
I know. It's funny that less than a kilometre away from here, about 2 years ago, we had our first yarn.
We did, down at the Leaky Tap, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was it.
Yeah.
And the girl who's running that, all of a sudden is now the Ninja Warrior for Australia.
Is that right?
Yeah, she's the number 1.
Oh, they're doing pretty well down there too, actually.
Yeah.
It's a great little place to call in and grab a coffee because parking's easy.
It's bloody
from
good.
the beach and back.
It's exactly right. So what we want to do with the iyarn, I think we're just going to try out something initially, have a bit of a conversation, but you've got a bit of a quote for us.
Yeah, well look, I've had this quote which has become quite well used now over the last few years, but I reckon I came across it and I hadn't heard it before about 15, 17 years ago, because I love reading American historical biography. So one of my great heroes that I love reading about, and I've bought all his books that he's written and have been written about him, is Theodore Roosevelt, which was the president of the USA in the early 1900s, 1901 to 1908 or something like that. Anyway, so it's called The Man in the Arena. It could be the man or woman, so maybe I'll better add in and make it gender proper. So it's not the critic who counts, not the man or the woman who points out how the strong man or woman stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man or the woman who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming, but actually who does strive to do the deeds. So it's the whole point about, like, have a crack, and if you stuff up and mess up, so what, that's how we make progress. So I've really always liked that, because I over the years in various roles I've kind of come under, and if you're a public figure, and I have been it from time to time, you do come under criticism, and so you can take that in different ways, but I've always enjoyed that because he encouraged you to get in there, and no matter what, it's not the critic who counts, it's the one who's actually making the effort and having a crack.
Well, it's quite like thanks for sharing that one. It's quite stoic, really, that philosophy around going and get the work done.
Yeah. Look, and he was one of these energetic, 5 foot, 6 kind of ball of energy that just went. So, it's not everybody, and he dabbled and he kind of was into everything. So he always inspired me, but I think just having a go is not a bad thing. You could call it stoicism or call it just, being open to kind of trying things. So, you could go at any level of that spectrum, by, wanting to kind of change the world like he did, started the environmental movement and the, national parks and all the rest of it. Or it could be just put your toe in the water. That's the other way of looking at that, I guess.
And you said you actually memorised that.
I did about 15 years, 16 years ago. It goes on a little bit further than what we did today, but I have to read it now because my memory is not as good as it used to be. So is that like a morning mantra that you used to do? No, it's just something that used to inspire me because as I said, when you do come under criticism, unfair criticism most of the time, it's just nice to be encouraged by, look, it's not those who are criticising. By all means, let people criticise and have their say, but they're not the ones who really count. It's if you're having a go and trying to make a difference, you're not going to please everyone and you're not going to get it right every time, which is what he was saying. So that was an encouragement.
Yeah, right. You've got another quote here.
Yeah, well, the other thing that's always been really important to me, hence maybe why I latched on to kind of what we were on about, is developing relationships and friendships. So Albert Camus got this other great little thing about friendship. Says, don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Just walk beside me and be my friend. So I think that's a really good message about, particularly if you're into kind of leadership roles and all the rest of it, you do that at times, and other times, you need to follow. You can't be a leader without followers, and vice versa. But in the midst of all that, the most important thing is to have friends, and have relationships.
And the thing that kind of, when I hear you say that, I guess think of all these people who I know who really just see you as, as a leader, but a mate. Not just a leader, but a real mate walking as like, let's have a coffee and catch up and that.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I've always enjoyed the relationship side of things, and just encouraging people and seeing where their journey might lead, and it's a mutual thing. It's not one way.
Yeah.
So you learn and grow and get stretched and inspired by others.
Well, I think about the time. So you in football, you've played a big role with football clubs, and with the Perth right now, with the Demons.
With West Perth, West Perth, the Falcons.
Oh, the Falcons. Sorry. Yeah. Whoops, I put this. Oh,
yeah, no, I got called out of retirement to kind of come in and help out at West Perth Football Club out at Joondalup.
Yep.
Who were struggling, and so. It's great to be part of that, and footy and sport, whether it be surf lifesaving like you're into, or football or netball or whatever it might be, just such a great environment and milieu to kind of develop those relationships. And one of the things I seriously miss about life is not being involved in a team sport now when I'm a bit older. I mean, I could play veterans and whatever, but my knees are no good, so I do really miss that.
Yeah, right. And I guess because I think of like Clancy at Claremont Footy Club. So you've played roles with other clubs as well as a chaplain, as a mentor?
So I was a chaplain down at the West Coast Eagles for 23 years or so. So back from 1993 and all that period of time. So I was able to was probably one of the first AFL chaplains in WA. Was able to kind of forge a pathway for pastoral care and just being there as a mate and as someone that was totally confidential. That's the important thing about that relationship.
Right.
So I wasn't there to kind of be on the selection committee and kind of had any decisions whether someone played footy or not. It was about just being there for the everyday issues of life, whether they be girlfriends, friends, relationships, career, whatever.
So you've done, like I've seen on my side, a lot of the active work you do in the community through a lot of the football clubs and things like that. But then also professionally, as a doctor, you've done a lot of like real strategic businesses, engaged in many businesses. In Bethesda Hospital, you're still engaged there? Yeah,
so I'm still have been the executive chairman at Bethesda, and Bethesda's a great little boutique private hospital here that has a real passion for palliative care.
Yep.
So in the last 10 to 15 years, we've been at the forefront of providing that end-of-life care for people. And so we're quite committed to that, and that's something that we want to expand and grow. So that's one of my areas that I've been involved in. I moved into health management after being a doctor, 30 years ago, because I just had a passion for organisations and working with, teams of people to achieve, a shared vision for whatever it might be. So I've had, very privileged to run, large hospitals and, the health system and try and, make a change at the big level. But at the same time, I've enjoyed that because it's, you do it with a group of people, and you develop the team, you bring them along. And
so how many people working in these hospitals, some of the ones you've been working
Well, when I used to run the health department, we had, 37,000 kind of employees, which I was responsible for. So I've got one of the great jobs I'm doing now, I'm a bit like you, kind of do a lot of travel around the state. I chair the WA Country Health Service Board, which is the board that looks after all the health services, government health services and partnerships throughout the whole of country WA. And that's amazing, to get out into Aboriginal communities like that at Jigalong just a couple of months ago, and Fitzroy, and get out there and see the great job staff are doing, our Aboriginal partners at the Aboriginal Medical Service and that kind of stuff. And at the same time deal with the real challenges of not just looking after people when they're unwell, but the well-being side of things, which is another passion that I was involved in terms of the mental health side of our community.
And I guess that's where kind of I was seeing you as a bit of a mentor. We had a few conversations at the back end of ICEA, my work in the Indigenous communities and things like that. And then, into this well-being and mental health space. So you specifically are really, you're doing, out of all the health areas, you're probably working in that area. Would it be more than to others, or?
Well, not really. In the last 7 or so years, I had the privilege of being on the Suicide Prevention Council and trying to deal with that issue. I'd have to say that we're making short runs, or not the best progress that we'd like to make in that space. It's such a difficult area, and the mental health and well-being of our community starts very early, and I think that's the message. So what we can do to kind of create environments for families, or where there are no families, friendships and mentors and that type of thing. I think that is going to be one of the real secrets. And of course, the social media that we now all have, and as we know, the digital world we all live in, we can't reject that. We know that it causes a lot of isolation in terms of friendships, and people have a relationship with their phone more than
that's known. That's known.
Yeah, we know that. But you can't just say, well, get rid of phones and go back to talking to each other. You've got to work with that. And so something like what you're on about with the iyarn is fantastic, because it marries that technology and the digital kind of world that we all now live in with real content and real relationships.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess it's a nice little flow into this next little phase of what we're doing is managing the balance of family, personally, and our professional lives. And when you got in a public role, such as when you're leading the Department of Health, all of a sudden, how do you keep a bit of consistency at home when the kids are going through high school? So you had these quotes, which is a bit of a thing that ran in the back of your mind. What were some other things that you did to kind of stay strong?
I've always been a believer in. I've always been a very busy kind of person, but I've been pretty good at resting and retreating, I used to call it. So it kind of comes from the Hebrew kind of idea of Sabbath. So the Hebrews, in the Old Testament times, had this idea. Well, there were 6 days, and then you had the 7th day, which they called the Sabbath, which is a day of rest. So that whole kind of idea of whether you're not a religious thing, it's just a whole idea of a rhythm of your life where you actually, work hard and then take that day off. Now, I'm not saying that has to be on a weekly basis. That could be on a daily basis, or it could be on an annual basis. That's why we have annual leave. You have that break, that rest. So I've always kind of tried to have that in my life. And for some reason, even when I was back at 17, 18-year-old, I used to take off for a couple of days just into the bush and kind of camp and tent and just journal and be by myself. So that's something that I've kind of always tried to do, have a bit of a retreat rhythm in my life. I'm not as good at it as it sounds. I know, so sometimes I get really tired and crazy. So, and I think on my wheel there, I kind of said my sleep's not that great at the moment because there's that many things going on. So that's something probably I need to. Maybe it's coming into Christmas, right? So I know I've got 3 weeks. My world's not coming down like that. 3 weeks, coming up to kind of relax. Try to anyway.
Right, and I think everyone has this idea, we need to rest more, and I think the funny thing that me and my partner have been talking about this Christmas time was last Christmas, it was just on the beers, partying, going out, catching up with friends, not living here, and all of a sudden we're going back and I'm actually, my cup isn't full. I'm actually a bit depleted. So it's one of these classic things. And so you said when you were younger you used to do those camps. So these days you still you maybe not your camping, you may be staying in a 5-star hotel.
Yeah, well, so I do a lot of travel now. So in that sense, I do get that opportunity to, even though it's busy and you're onto an airplane, every second day, you do get a chance to have your downtime, which is good. I think you've got to make creative use of that though. So I love reading, which is good. I used to journal. I haven't journaled for quite a while, and that was a good exercise to kind of, I never went back and read it again, but it was a good exercise to kind of, vent or just, capture some of the thoughts that, and I think there's a rhythm to doing that, to give you a bit of downtime. Yeah, therapeutic is a good word. Yeah. For
me, I used to do a lot of these journaling because I remember one of my mates' dads met up with Richard Branson.
Yep.
And he goes, if he had 30-second window, he goes, if there's one recommendation you'd tell me to, you'd encourage me to do, what would it be? And he goes, journaling.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then from that moment, I was like, I'm going to journal.
Yeah.
And then writing there, it was very I made consistently every week. And then that's what manifested this really. Because I was like, shit, I don't want to write a whole A4 page. I just want to get a picture where I'm at. I don't have time to do this thing, but actually I'm going to put it. And that's how the iyarn has come about. So I think what we might do is just kind of shoot into your actual iyarn here. So this is the iyarn. We've gone a few different segments. You actually had a different one here that you've done as well. So there's a bunch of these, but there's a bit of overlap with some of these. So mindfulness, and we can dance between the two. So if we were to look at this one, so these three strong ones, you've got contribution, work, and growth. So these are all pretty solid. Do you feel that these ones, do they move much often, or?
Look, the work one I probably scored highly because I'm highly energised at the moment with some really great projects and some big challenges on a number of fronts. So, I find that energy creates energy. So, you've probably heard that saying. So, the work I'm saying is highly energised, but at times, obviously, things don't go well. They can nosedive fairly quickly. The contribution one, I've also scored fairly highly because, one of the things I try and do is give back, and I do a number of pro bono things currently which are about developing leadership in healthcare. Right. So and the whole idea is to leave a legacy in the healthcare system, both in Australia, and I've got the opportunity to kind of do that, play on that on the global. I chair a global kind of group that's trying to raise the bar in the professionalisation of healthcare management. Because if we know that if you have better managed healthcare systems, it's going to have a better result for patients and for the hospitals or the prevention programs, whatever it is.
So is that kind of like encouraging people in that practice to do like an MBA? Or?
Yeah, well, part of it is academic study, but part of it is just that continual professional learning. So the other thing I put down there, I score myself higher in, is growth. Because one of the things that I'm very committed to is always trying to learn new stuff. You get. I'm a avid surfer of the net. Particularly in my space, which is leadership in healthcare and kind of what's happening to make healthcare, systems better and organisations and how to develop people. So I really enjoy that space. So that energises me. So I score myself highly on that. But the contribution one, look, whether it be, volunteering or pro bono work, working on things like I'm doing, that's all part of it. I mean, our community has got a massive amount of people that make huge contributions, I mean, even at my little hospital, we had a volunteers morning tea the other day. About 60 or so of our volunteers all came together, and we calculated there's about $250,000 worth of labour that's volunteered by just a group of 50, older people that come and do voluntary things, say hello to the patients or, help out with, stuffing envelopes and forms and things like that.
It's just, I hear of volunteering and I think more and more about like this idea of contribution. It really is that social fabric, that yarn, it kind of holds us, really a lot of us together. Because if we are all of a sudden, I won't do that, help out the local football club, my son's year 10 group, or all these different things, all of a sudden you're not having that diversity in the community. And that's why I think volunteering and this contribution where you're giving, it's that unconditional giving. Is
well, that's that great mental health program, the ABC, Act, Belong, Commit. It's all about kind of belonging to somewhere, and there's always something that you can find to do to help. Run water at the footy oval, or you don't have to get up and be the coach. You can do all sorts of things. And I think, and why do we have a minister for volunteers? I mean, governments now recognise that this is a really important part of our fabric of our community. So, they probably could do more to facilitate volunteering. So make volunteering easier.
It's interesting. And then these governments, we talk on a macro level, like we've been doing a bit of commentary about over in the UK. They've got a ministry for loneliness. Because they're so far gone. I feel like you've got volunteering and then there's actually a loneliness thing where it's actually far out. This is a top agenda. We've got people who don't have anywhere to go. And we do have that in WA when they're so unwell and so out, they don't actually have someone to connect to. So how do we create a culture that people coming together? Social prescription is what they're calling it. And this is what I think I'm going to talk about a little bit, is actually the value at that talk, talking about is that social prescription rather than the biological and psychological challenges of anxiety and depression. But then there's also this social aspect. So like, Ryan, you go to a GP, your GP actually says, oh, have you given back to your local community at all? Have you planted some trees? Have you picked up rubbish? Or are you working on a collective project with your group? And it's quite interesting, that idea, or like handing out water at the old football club, and these kind of things. I think it's a big one. And
it is.
Yeah,
it's a scary statistic that I remember Ken White talking about a year ago. He was the Minister for Aged Care before the previous election, and he said that they'd done a survey, or someone done a survey in aged care facilities, and I think it was 40% of people in aged care facilities, it might have been even higher, had not received one visit in those facilities in that previous year.
In the previous year.
So it's any wonder that the highest incidence of suicide is actually older people. I mean, the prevalence rate is much higher in the younger males, but the most number of people who actually take their own lives, unfortunately, is older people, and that really usually relates to loneliness, feeling no longer of use anymore. So, our society's got to recalibrate itself a little bit, I think, in terms of, and as the Royal Commission in Aged Care is showing us, that we need to do more to respect, our elders. Hence our real desire to kind of be involved in palliative care at Bethesda and all that kind of stuff. There's huge opportunities for greater connections.
Right, and I guess, and this greater connection, it kind of leads into this next bit. Like, you've got these three strength ones, but then these ones here, they're not, they're less than ideal, really, aren't they?
Yeah, well, what did I put there? Well, friends, 6.4, yeah, whatever that means. I mean, I've got good friends, but I think, I probably haven't had enough time in the last probably 3 or 4 months to really connect at a deeper level. Hi, how you going kind of stuff, and let's have a drink. Probably not good enough. So I value, and look, you only have a few that you can kind of have that type of deeper relationship with anyway. So I think one of the things I would encourage people who are listening or watching, whatever, is that don't try and think you have to have everybody at the same level of a relationship. You're probably going to have 2 or 3, frankly, maybe a few more. And if you have a partner, that'll be a different relation. That'll be a different level of friendship than with, say, your friends. Male or female. I mean, I've had great female friends through my life as well, like, other than my wife. So that's been really helpful.
I think it's a really good point to raise, because I actually got a message bizarrely last night from someone who probably more like a professional engagement, and I put up a post around friendship last night, and he kind of hit me up about it. He's like, I kind of tried to reach out and catch up and be a friend, and it was, in the spirit of it, was more bringing me up on that I didn't meet his expectation of that.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's so funny this timing, having this interview right now, but it was great. And I sent him a message back and go, mate, the reality is I've got some great friends that I've got from my youth, and that's, and I've got to nourish those relationships, those friendships, and I apologise if I've kind of led off a different way. And it was really, I've never actually ever in my whole life had that, but I respect him so much for being mature and saying, this is an older guy, he's like, older guy, and we met and passed professionally. Yeah. But it was interesting, I put a post up about Facebook and it started something for him. And I wonder how many other people maybe feel like that, and how do I maybe neutralise that situation? Like, have you had anything like that?
Oh, look, yeah, that's it. When you become let's say a bit of a public figure, and say a bit of an extrovert, a little bit popular, and kind of everyone wants to be your friend, and you do get a lot of people that then have an expectation that you will be that deep friend for them. The facts are you can't. Yeah. And you will upset some people because you're not being a friend to me. You said you've got to be a friend to everyone. Well, you're not. How come you haven't rung me? Well, if someone ever asked that question, how come you haven't ever rung me? I kind of like, well, you could have rung me. So it's not about that's probably not the friends that are going to be the deep ones that count. Yeah. But meeting other people's expectations is something that you just got to kind of put aside. You're not going to be everybody's best friend.
And I think this is one of the real cool things when we first chatted about this process is, the word that you said, it's like actually supporting people to be better friends. Because if there are these blind sides that you're just gung-ho with your career or your relationship, but actually you can hone back and actually put that person who, I've got friends who are my best friends who live in Perth. I live in Sydney. is 3 hours difference during summer. And all of a sudden, like weeks go by, months go by, and then actually are we connecting deeply?
Yep.
I don't know how he's going on his mental health level and things like that. And to be able to create a space for us to be better friends and actually create and say, all right, now Neale or now Geordie, who I'm chatting with later, this is our time for us to go deep.
Yeah. So, and if you don't have those, the starting point is if you want a friend, you've heard the saying, you want a friend, be a friend. So, pick up the phone and kind of say, let's go and have a coffee or a beer or whatever, or a swim or whatever, and just, say, how are things going? Now, some people are going to not have room for that.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's a lot of people in the world, and, just have a crack.
And that's what I think is so beautiful about, and then this idea around contribution, volunteering. You're meeting like-minded people who care about things. Like the friends you may have at school or uni may not be the friends you have in more adult life, and that's the reality of a lot of people, most people. And I think he's been really kind of conscious of that as you as you go through. And then I guess this asked a weird is like, do we in health? Like, so you said you're up at 5 o'clock doing a PT.
Well,
this morning,
I could look after myself a lot better. That's probably the one I will continue to score low on. Just kind of the knees are gone, but it's not that. It's more about being more regular. So I do have the privilege of hiring a personal trainer when I'm in Perth to use him, but I don't use him enough. But it was a 5 o'clock start this morning because he had a busy day with all his clients, probably all trying to get ready for the break as well. So pudding. Look, that really comes down to self-discipline, which is something that we all probably struggle with. Whether it be food, alcohol, or exercise.
Yeah. And so do you feel like, because your kids are all very healthy, and your young son Sam, he's over in Sydney. And he's playing football still, so you're living vicariously through him.
A bit of that. Absolutely, yeah. I love going to all the kids' sport and stuff. So you do that a bit. But look, it's just a matter of being, probably accountability is the other thing in that space. Having someone that can kind of make you accountable in that space. So having not everyone can afford or can find someone to kind of train them, and that's so I do that, but that in that way it keeps me accountable. I mean, I used to have not just dropping names, but Woosha John Worsfold and I, when he retired from footy, we're close mates, and we would run 3 or 4 times a week, and we just with 6 a.m. in the morning. I lived in City Beach, he lived in Florida. We would meet, and it was just always happened, always on time, and met. There was that accountability thing. We did it. So I think that's the key for me, having someone to do it with that makes you kind of wake up and turn up. Yeah.
And if there was any...
Not great at it though.
Yeah, not what?
Not great at it. I could do better. So hence the score. So
like sometimes it's like a bit of a challenge, because I think when you have these conversations, it's like connections built through vulnerability. So going a bit deeper around these certain things, and so sharing that. Thank you. I guess the next thing is, and I think when you do what we want to do with this podcast is kind of acknowledging each other when we do these, is that actually it's not always comfortable to go deep and share vulnerability and these kind of things. So like if you were to look at one of these, is like say next time we have an iyarn and check in, do you reckon that there is something here, because this total, this score here, that could potentially, if you did, what would you do in maybe 1 or 2 of these that could increase it by a point?
Well, in the family side of things, I think with one of my kids, Sam, being in Sydney, another one being married now, and 2 at home and not home very much, there's probably a better concerted effort to kind of work on that. Some of them are going through that phase where they're more grunting than kind of communicating. So I would like that to be better, to be frank. We had a big family holiday in New Zealand about 2 months ago, which was amazing. And to have that time when all of us were together, and to kind of see how we do get on when we're all together was great. But I think that's something that I'd like to do a bit of work in by next time if I was yarning with you again. Yeah.
What could that look like? Like, do you think that's just more experiences to come, like a New Zealand trip together?
Or just maybe more simple things like let's go and have a beer down at the OBH or something like that with some of them. Yeah. One
of my mentors back in Melbourne, what he did recently with his family it was really interesting. He said he used to be the head of private wealth CBA, and so he's used to doing these glamorous 5-star hotels, all that, and he found, and then they went to Burma. And then they went there. Sorry, what's the new word for Burma now? Myanmar. Sorry, Myanmar, and they built a school for a week. Yeah. And he found that the family was riffing and having issues at the 5-star, when all of a sudden they're packed up in a non-air conditioned bus, going and then doing it. All of a sudden, that just bonded them so much more. Yeah. And I thought that was just a really interesting kind of like holiday. It's a very privileged holiday to be able to do something like that. But for him, his family, for him, and that's what he's now. All right, we're going to be doing this a lot more. It's not about us, it's about the community, and this back to the idea around these kind of things. It was quite interesting.
Yeah. Well, you and I both know, Bruce Robinson, Fathering Project. Yeah. So, again, 15, 16 years ago when Bruce first wrote his book, Fathering in the Fast Lane, I was a small contributor in that book, and, his book was all about how do you actually give us a few tips about how you father. So one of the things that I had done even, like 20 years ago was to take every one of my own kids kind of out for breakfast. And not to McDonald's or somewhere where they just kind of go off and play and this is when they're little, but out to breakfast where you have to Vans or a similar type thing where you go and sit down and have a proper breakfast and just ask them how are things going, even. So I've kind of done that. And I think if you ask my kids, they'd say they remember those times and there's a connection there. And it was about saying, well, how are things going and how am I going? Am I being good? Nah, you're too angry, or you're too, stuff like that would come out. And so it was a good thing to do.
Fantastic.
That was one of my little tips from years ago, and I probably should be doing that a bit more.
Right. I think it's a nice little kind of end point, really. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Lockie. Yeah, fantastic. I mean, I'm just, going to be really excited to see where it goes. And I reckon it's a great tool to kind of, really take people deeper with each other. And there's nothing better than having those deeper conversations with people, than things that really count. So well done.
No, thank you very much. Okay.